All right, thank you everyone for watching this video. In this video, I am going to try to do a comparative analysis of the various automation tools which are available for Revit. Okay, and please note that this is just not a theory. I'm trying to share some of these from a real performance data and practical implementations. Okay, so before we get into the tools, let me try to address these questions, which I quite often get asked. So, plugin versus Dynamo versus AI, which one should I really choose? There are tools which are available in the market, which are paid versus free. Is expensive always better? Where do I really start implementing these tools? And the big one, which is basically like what's the fastest way to achieve the ROI? And what I personally think is that it all depends on the decisions. Okay, we are spending thousands in software cost, months of implementation time, your team's productivity, and ultimately with the competitive advantage that we have within the market. All right, so here we are trying to do the 7 comparisons of the different approaches. This is to best of my knowledge. So you got Revit plugin, which can handle specific tasks. Um, and there are plugins which are available for free. There are plugins which cost you probably $500 a year or probably more. Okay, and it may also depends on the number of users, etc., that you may have within your organization. The other one is the Dynamo. It's basically free part of the Revit, so it's basically flexible. You can uh, do your graphs and then execute it across the projects. Okay. There is the AI integration, so this is quite happening a lot. I've posted some of these videos in the past. Within this AI, like you can have a basically a chat window on top of Revit, and then you can ask it to do some comparison, some analysis, some data updates, etc. Macros is also one way to do the automation. That's also free. It's basically part of your Revit. You can start coding it into several languages directly within Revit. And it may be good, but I haven't been using it for a while now. Agentic AI, I think this is also probably one of these futuristic uh, way to do quite a lot of tasks, get these various systems connected, talk to each other in a sense that you can translate the data from one application to another application. And the cost may also vary, and also depends on how you want to make this work. There is with the Autodesk APS, the Autodesk Platform Services, you can also use this design automation to execute some of these tasks for the models which are hosted onto the cloud. That's purely based on the cloud credits and the task and the time of executions that rolls out across these different activities. And another very simple one is the Revit journals. That's basically if you perform certain activities, you can strip out the actions that has been performed within Revit, and then you can probably clean up that and then try to rerun it. That's not very straightforward, but you can. That's one way of doing it. And some of these costs which I have shown here, they may change. As I said, like it depends. Like if you have 5 people, you have 500 people in your organization, that may vary. All right. So in terms of the assessment criteria, okay. So before we talk about the assessment criteria, I think it is very important to understand that not every solutions may fit with every team. So you really need to start doing the documentation of some of these repetitive tasks that you may have, and then you can start putting some measures in place to improve. Okay. The second is that your team skills. So let's be realistic. Like, do you have someone in your team who knows how to write a plugin or a Dynamo script, or can integrate some of these AI, LLMs within these models. Okay. That could be one way to start seeing how things can get plug and play. And when it comes to the budget, I guess this depends on the company to company. Like, you may have some allocated budget that can help to do the development. Probably this way you may have hire some of these developers within your organizations that can help you to build it. And more importantly, now from Revit 2025 onwards, there is a lot of change in terms of the .NET framework. So when choosing or when purchasing any of these plugins or which are available in the market, just make sure that they are compatible to the newer versions, because it may be probably working for your lower versions like Revit 2024 or previous ones, but then because of not having these compatibility, the vendor, if it is free, probably I don't know if that individual who uploaded that plugin may be able to rebundle it to a newer framework and then publish it. Security and the compliance requirement, I think this is also very important to go, in a sense that whether if you are integrating any of these AI integrated tools, like, where that data is going, is it going for learning for the vendor based on your organization data. I think there are some key constraint that needs to be probably looked into. A couple of things that I've done in the past is that I try to analyze. So this is just one of the examples, and I try to strip down some of the data from here. And if you happen to see within this document, there is a priority level that shows basically what are the implications of that specific task, the nature of um, the time that that task get executed. So for instance, if I am exporting an IFC file from a model, then how frequently do I do that? And which means that, does it apply for the concept design, schematic design, DD, or etc. Okay. And what is the implication for that specific task across the different discipline, right? And the different versions that we just talked about. And to be honest, it's not always about automation. If you need to have a better template, you need to have a better library of the objects, because the automation may fail. Like, for example, if you have written a plugin that says that, okay, look for this specific attribute and try to update the value for that uh, attribute, and if it is not existing within your template or within your object library, then probably that automation may fail. Okay, so you need to have some of these fundamental things being tidied up, then look for these automation activities. But if you start exploring, or if you start mining these different tasks which are relevant, that you frequently do across the project, I think that's one way of saving some time. Okay. All right. And this is one of the automation log that I had from the past. where I have to execute some of these tasks. For example, like the model audit, look for the model coordinates, whether everything is aligned, look at the naming convention of these objects, and get some quantity takeoffs, etc. So this log shows, for instance, the time it took to execute the specific activities. So these are these individual commands that were available within that plugin, and it tells you basically after exporting or after completing the task what's the status. So it shows you whether like the audit was completed, it was success. There was some shared parameter related status, just checking whether those attributes are there within the model. Those got failed because they were not existing within that specific project, and it shows you the time it took to complete that activity. So this way you can have some real data of these repetitive tasks and try to understand these row by row, like the amount of time that you are spending it manually versus automated. What level of these tasks, which are, if you can prioritize them based on the different priorities, I think that would also be helpful. Okay. I guess I would not go too much into the takeaways. I'll let you read it. But the whole point of that is that there is a real advantage of focusing on automation. It's not only because of saving time, but also from an organization perspective. The more projects that you can finish, the more projects you can win. Okay. All right. I think this is it for the video. I hope this might have been help, but I would have just given you one more example um, in a sense to give you some taste of these tasks. So for instance, let's say I've got a set of these rooms in the model, and what I am trying to do is that I'm onto an area plan, and I need to place an area because there are rooms which are already placed here, but at the same time I just have to place some areas, and then basically extract the schedule. Okay, so in that instance, if I just go to this specific plugin where I can take, for instance, like room to area lines, there are a bunch of rooms here. All the plugin is trying to do is that it's trying to create the area separation line by selecting the rooms. So I can select the rooms, I can finish these tasks, and it has placed all of these area separation lines. Now I need to place the the areas to it, so I can just go rooms to area, I can select that, and then I can place it. So now what it did is that it placed the area. Okay. But imagine now, because there is one area here and then there is another one, let me just turn off the rooms and I'll apply a scheme. All right, so now you can see that there are various of these areas being placed. And let's say now if I have to merge the area between these ones. So there is one here and then there is one here. And now all we wanted to do is that we just want to merge these two different rooms into a single boundary of an area. So in that instance, if I go to, okay, if I go to this area merger, what I can do is I can pick the first area and then I can pick the second one. And then when I finish it, it's basically one single area. So something like this, if you wanted to try, a plugin would be a good fit, but at the same time, Dynamo can also help you do that, because that's basically extracting the curves, etc. Um, and if you're trying to do the same thing with any of this AI integrated plugin, that might be very costly, because every time you're asking it to write a prompt to do that, which means that it's taking those tokens and then it's rewriting the code, etc. It depends on the solution behavior that you have. But the idea is that if you tend to do this simple task, I mean, this is definitely not a simple task. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, to have achieved to this level, you really need to understand what level of problem that you're going to solve. Is a plugin a good fit or a dynamo a good fit? Because every time you need to perform these level of activities, you need to think about the time, the complexity that it takes. For instance, if I have something like a very simple interface where if I have to have like the first click, the second click, and the other third clicks, which means that this is basically 4 clicks for me, but it's saving me a lot of time here. Okay, so for these kind of activities, when you are actually having to have document all of these different tasks that you have for a project, or that are repetitive to the projects that you deliver, in that you need to identify which of these tasks which are relevant. So if you further customize this with the workflow used to say that, okay, this might be a good fit for a plugin, or it might be a good fit for a Dynamo workflow or an AI workflow.